Welcome to part 5, and we're now ready to start on the spice rack, having learnt all those skills on our bench hook. Very exciting, but the first thing I need to do is to choose a face edge that I need to plane to mark against. And if you have a look along that edge, you'll see that it's got quite a nasty split in it that I haven't mended, whereas this side has got a reasonably clean edge, and I think I'll use this as my face edge. I've checked it for square and it needs a fraction taken off this side. Pretty good. The end of my timber isn't square. If you have a look at it, there is a considerable difference between square and what that is. So I've got to first of all provide myself with a square end, and I will do that straight away. I can probably go straight to the marking knife. I think that's going to take off about 5mm at its widest part. Any closer than that to the end and I find it difficult to saw because bits keep breaking off. Ping it in. Make sure we're using that reference edge. And I now know that the line top and bottom is absolutely above one another. My wonderful bench hook, I can use that now. And to make my life a little bit easier, what I'll do, I'll pack up the other end of that piece of wood with a spare piece so it's lying nice and flat on the bench hook. Position my saw. Checking. Check I'm following the line down that far side. That's fine. And what I should have achieved is a nice square end, which I have. I can measure from that. The distance I'm going to measure is 285. Make sure my steel rule is parallel to this edge. 285. Put a mark. Use my square against the reference edge, nice sharp pencil, and check it. $285, dead on, and please. And we're ready for the first bit. Sawing on the waist side of the line. Spot on. 285. Now we can use this sawn edge because we know it's going to be square, but it's a little bit splintery. I could have put 2 parallel lines down there and I would have had a nice unbroken edge here, but what I'm going to do is just plane that rough piece off. This is the sort of rough bit I'm talking about, and this is how we deal with it. We set the work quite low in the vise, and we also set a very fine cut on the plane. We settle the plane on top of our work, and I've got my plane working at a slight angle because I want to pull those fibres in towards the main body of the wood. And I'm careful that I don't go all the way across the surface, because if I do, I'll break out that far edge. So I'm just going to work from the outside towards the middle, then I'm going to come back the other way, settle the plane, and work outside towards the middle. And that will have cleaned it off. And the alternative to that is using glass paper. If you're going to use glass paper, you shouldn't go nuts with it. Just a couple of wipes with it wrapped around a block at 45 degrees, that direction will give you the smooth edge that you're after. Right, that's our first bit cut, and we just got to do it 4 more times. I've now got 4 pieces, 285 long, and what I need to do now is to saw and plane them to width. The width I want for each piece is 70 millimeters. And I'm going to use a marking gauge against my reference edge to gauge a line 70 millimeters from that edge. I'm then going to saw with a hand saw through that line, just slightly on the waist side so that I've got room to plane it back exactly to 70 millimeters. We'll set it 70 as we did before by putting the spur into the 70 millimeter mark, clicking it in place, and then bringing our fence up to the end of the steel rule, tightening that null screw and checking it, getting the point of the spur in that 70 millimeter mark so that it clicks in, and just checking that the end of that steel rule is tight up against that fence. Make sure that's nice and tight, double check it because we don't want this to go wrong. 70 millimeters. Now what we can do is to use our reference edge that we've got here, and we're just going to draw a line down the piece of wood. Now I'm holding this slightly differently because I've got a lot of that stem projecting from the fence, so I want to get my thumb a little nearer the spur than I was last time. And I want to get a deep enough impression with that spur to be able to run a pencil down it. And I can flip it over and do the same thing again. Good. Run a sharp pencil down that spur line so that I can see what I'm doing with my handsaw. Oops. So that happens when you haven't got a sharp pencil. Let's get a sharp pencil, hold on. There. Good. Pop that in the vise, and I'll put a spare piece in the other end of the Workmate so that my jaws remain parallel. And like I did with the bench hook, I'm going to give myself a millimetre and a half of leeway that I can plane the edge down to. Good. And we can now plane that to width. Got more to take off at this end, so I'll have it that way around in the vise, I think. Check it for square. Yep, to those very rough surfaces it's square. I've just left a whisker to plane off to bring it back to exactly 17. And now I haven't got much to take off on those surfaces before I can get two decent sides, face sides and the opposite side. I think I can start on this one because that knot isn't quite as apparent. It'll make my life a bit easier. So my first job is to plane this surface down so that it's absolutely flat in this direction, absolutely flat in that direction, and also there shouldn't be a twist in it either, but it's such a short length that's going to be unlikely. Again, I have to set my plane so that I'm optimizing the cut. That feels okay. I'm going to bump that up against the skirting so that I've got a bit of room to work, and the Workmate isn't going to move away from me. Put a finer cut on the plane. And I got rid of all the imperfections from the surface. Check it for flatness. Dead flat that way, dead flat that way, and we can even check it for winding by putting my plane on one end, putting that the other end, and lining that up with the bottom of the plane, and that's good as well. So we have now a face side, and you can see that with a nice sharp plane there's no need for any glass papering. That's a perfectly good finish. In fact, if you look along it, it's quite shiny. I don't know whether you can share that experience. Perfect surface. Good, I'm pleased.